This episode of the Coarse Grind Podcast has been brought to you by Central Sports and Graphics Incorporated, family-owned and operated screen printing and embroidery business located in a historic storefront on Old Berwick Road in the heart of SB. They've been doing screen printing for over 20 years. They have high-quality product at a low price. Be sure to check them out. Central Sports and Graphics Incorporated, 570-784-1212. Now, on to the show.
You guys know me. I'm that chef guy that everybody says, hey, don't I know you from somewhere? And I am super stoked to be with Shawn Rosler on the Coarse Grind Podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Episode number 188. Jesus Christ. Of the Coarse Grind Podcast. With you again this evening, host, creator, Shawn Rosler. How the hell is everyone doing this evening? You know, one of the most enjoyable parts of this gig, and I know I talk a lot about enjoyable parts, I get it, is the people I get to meet because of it. Maybe it's not just because of this show, but more maybe about its interests, its foci, if you will, which is plural for focus. A brief history, if I may indulge myself. I was, at one point in time, a huge O&A fan. That's Opie and Anthony, for those unaware. And if I'm to be honest, Opie's presence, hope you're listening, Greg, and venture off into solo pastures, not solar pastures, that's going in behind us, was pretty influential in my approach to broadcasting. Opie definitely molded a lot of that. So, but not so much as a certain someone, a certain Cuban. Chef Carl Ruiz, founder of such things as Ruizing, more on that later, was and truthfully still is an icon to many of us with culinary inclinations. We, the many, we, the fans, do not have to be industry pros with a pedigree and all that fancy horse shit. No, Ruizing was about liking what you like and doing it with reckless abandon, and yes, most of the time that revolved around pork and booze, but who's counting? By way of Carl, I've had the chance to talk to many of his friends and colleagues, even his keeper, Gloria, Stan, Pete, Bobby, Nick. The list goes on. And again, without Carl, I couldn't share these stories. So, much like with Bourdain, I'm sad. I'm saddened more so with Carl because Carl passed a week after agreeing to do the show. Still hurts. But I feel solace in knowing all the cool people I've met. Speaking of, one of those whose story I've yet to share, and fandom of Ruizing like mine, is here tonight to wax nostalgic on the man, the legend, and the all-around good guy that Carl was. Tonight's guest is, of all things, a CPA, and yet is an artist, the likes of which I've never seen before. It got it hanging right in front of me right now here in the studio, and is able to keep virtual pace with my own Ruizing, which in and of itself is damned impressive. So let's cut the horseshit and get down to it, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between. My guest this evening on what I guess we can frame up as a tribute to the man himself, Carl Ruiz, Jersey-born CPA financial project manager who just happens to be one of the most talented artists I know, and a brother in Ruizing arms, Mikey LeBron. What's going on, buddy?
Hey, what's going on, Shawn? Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Pleasure to have you on. Pleasure to finally, as we were joking before the mics were on, you know, have you on, put the voice with the art, and the art is impressive, folks. You want to go out, you want to check out some impressive Carl Ruizing tribute. Go out, find him on the Insta. Mikey Eats It. There's the first plug of many to come, because the shit he's doing is so amazing. But I wanted to have him on to not only talk about the art that he does, which is, again, beyond impressive, but also just to kind of share a story, because Mikey and I share that bond of being a fan and that bond of being a non-industry person who loves the industry, and I think what it stands for, and I think we both, to a degree, have Carl to thank for that. So, Mikey, without further ado, let's talk about you, buddy. Tell me where you grew up and what you grew up eating. Talk to me about that.
All right. So, well, I actually grew up in the southeastern Connecticut, in a little farm town, just called Basra, and it has about 2,500 people in it. Been that way for years. And I actually grew up with my grandmother and my mom. So, I mean, it was a country town. My school had, grade K through 8. My graduating class had 18 people in it.
Wow. Okay.
So Not a lot going on in that town.
No. I can really.
Cows get big and stuff like that.
All right.
And so you make your own fun, right? Whatever. And
yep.
so, but back then, I mean, we didn't have a lot of money, right? Between my grandmother and my mom, so, but I never went hungry, right? I mean, so you would eat stuff like, my mom would make like a roast chicken, right? Stuff like that, which I didn't really like back then. But that was kind of like what we had with family, having chicken again,
Mm-hmm.
But chicken was cheap, and so that's what you ate. Either that or like spaghetti and meatballs, right? I make that a lot. Mac and cheese,
yeah. So, I mean, it really sounds like some of the more... Yeah. I mean, it definitely sounds like some of the more staple-based for somewhere where you might consider a more pastoral country upbringing.
Yeah. Shepherd's pie is big, it's like her parents are from England.
Oh,
so,
okay.
So that's where, I got my grandfather actually ate like lunch, like...
Oh, okay.
Alive, so stuff like that, lamb's tongues in a jar, I actually kind of like those.
Lamb's tongue? Wait a minute, go back for a second. Lamb's tongues in a jar?
Yeah, they're pickled, like a pickled egg.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, you pickle anything, it gets a little better, but... A little hair, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I don't eat them up. I don't eat them anymore, but I did when I was little. I just love those things.
Right on.
I got exposed to some interesting stuff back then.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely some interesting palate there to be had. So that kind of leads us into the next question. As an eater growing up, it sounds like you kind of had to be a little bit adventurous. You couldn't really necessarily have a picky palate.
Yeah, because back then it was, we make this and that's your dinner. And if you don't like it, you're not going to eat anything. So you just kind of had to suck it up and try. You had to try everything. And that's kind of my rule, as I just growing up. Like, well, I'm not going to restrict myself, right? If somebody says, hey, I've got some Rocky Mountain oysters, you want to try one? I would be like, okay.
Yeah.
And I would try one because I feel like, how are you going to expand your horizons and know if you like something if you don't try it?
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah.
That's just how I've been,
Oh, 100%. And so, I mean, that kind of leads me into, you and I, come from different areas, come from different backgrounds, and yet here we are standing at the threshold of greatness, the man himself, Carl, all the culinary greatness that surrounds him. And it's like, I feel, and I don't think this is an overstatement, that we maybe look at food differently than, say, the quote-unquote layperson. Most people would look at things like that, Rocky Mountain oysters, fugu, uni, all these Japanese things, and be like, that's disgusting. Whereas I think you and I look at it and go, adventure to be had. I wonder when you started, and it sounds like from an early age, but I'll let you obviously answer the question. When did you start to look at things like this that other people would scoff at, and you would go, but wait, let me try this?
I would say really, I was kind of always like that anyway, but then I'd say my real opportunity to really experience a lot of different kinds of food was when after I got out of college, and then I became an auditor, and I became an intern auditor, actually. That was where I started traveling. 85% of my time I was gone on a plane. So, and so I go all over the U.S., Canada, South America, and then I was able to just kind of go and experience some different, types of food, in a lot of different places. So that was a lot of eating out. It's fortunate that you're able to eat out.
Yeah.
It's also unfortunate when you're traveling around and not getting a lot of sleep and exercise. But
sure. Yeah. That's definitely the downside to it.
Yeah, but I definitely don't. I'm not discounting, being able to travel. That was three. I did it for 3.5 years. And it was a real great experience. So you can go, I went to Singapore back in 2019. I got to try eel for the first time, right? So that was great.
I'm sorry, you got to try what, Mikey?
Eel.
Oh, eel, okay.
Eels.
Yep.
Yeah, eel. That was something that was neat, right? But then this been a lot of interesting. And during that beginning of that time, I started there in 2013. I always had sort of interest in me, right? It was kind of underlying. And I just started, probably around that time, cooking more myself.
Oh, nice.
Just at home.
Yep.
And so it kind of came together. Like, I was like, all right, good. I can check out a lot of different types of food. I can learn more about how things taste and what I like, and then I can kind of translate that into, wanting to make something like that at home.
Yeah. And I mean, that's usually the gateway. The gateway to it. It's interesting. It's such a double-edged sword in that the gateway is eating different things, but then that's leading you into making different things, which leads you into eating more different things, and so on and so forth. So, like, as soon as one starts, the other tends to follow anyway, at least in my experience.
Yeah, and I started watching Food Network, I think, right around, maybe 2014, 2015.
Okay.
And, just trying to learn more about I used to watch really like Julia Child and Ken Cook and all those, PBS cooking shows, right? So I watched a lot of those as a kid. And as an adult, I latched on to Guy Fieri's Big Bite was the show that I started with, right?
Yep.
And that was when he was doing it like downstairs in his house or whatever. I started watching him do it. I'm like, obviously it's really good at what he does, but it was good to watch the process. I just wanted to watch the process, and then I eventually I watched that every week for a long time. Then I started watching other shows, and I bought a cookbook, and so that just kind of took off. From there, I really started cooking. I cook now probably 4 nights a week out of the week.
Wow.
I cook myself. So, and I do all the grocery shopping, every week, and I do the menu planning, all that stuff.
That's awesome, man. I don't even. I've given up on that in my house. I let my wife do that. She's smarter than me by far. It doesn't take much. And she's way more organized than I. But as soon as we get at home, I'll we can break it down together. But that's so, it's so interesting that, 188 episodes later, the origin story that I hear of both people who work in the industry and people who love the industry almost parallels one another. In that my old, it's not a running gag, but when I was a kid, I was a weird kid, man. I'd wake up and I'd watch Yank and Cook, Julia Child, Justin Smith, sorry, not Justin Smith, Justin Wilson, Jeff Smith, Frugal Gourmet, all on PBS instead of cartoons. And, and here's you kind of like waxing the same story forward. And so we find these outlets, and then we come to this dude, Carl. So, my story, I'll truncate because it doesn't really matter, and I've told it before, is that I found this loud, boisterous Cuban chef on, this dude that I actually did the walkover up in New York for my 30th birthday I was in studio with Opie that day, and, Opie leaves O&A, does his own thing, and I hear this just presence that is so omnipresent and intelligent and abrasive and all these wonderful things, and I latched right onto it. So it would have been the Creepy Cabin where I first really kind of got to know Carl. So I'll ask you, Mikey, you come into this culinary wherewithal, this culinary love. When was it that you discovered Carl?
It's kind of interesting because I'm half Latino myself.
Right.
So that's the last name is actually Spanish. So, I kind of latched onto Carl. I saw him on Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives, obviously. And then when he went on Guys Grocery Games, that's when I really kind of was like, man, he's really funny. Like, he's a huge personality. He knows what he's doing. You could tell he was really smart.
Yeah.
I just kind of became a fan. Like, I just was like, it was like an Insta fan, and I was like, man, this guy's awesome.
Yeah.
And he was just so down to earth and just kind of normal, and so, I just, every time Carl was on, it was just, my daughter was like, oh, watching it. She's a huge fan too. And then one day, I started up Instagram, I think back in like 2016, late 2016.
Okay.
And I was following Carl on there. I was following Carl on Facebook. I was following Carl on Twitter. And one day on his Instagram, he posts, hey, here's my real number, my real phone number. I'm keeping it for 24 hours. and he says, you want to text me? I'll give you a call back or something. And it wasn't to me. It was to everyone. Like,
yeah.
So I thought it was a joke. I was like, he's not going to do that. Like, that's stupid, you know. And I was like, hey, what the heck?
Yeah.
So I wrote it down. I put it on my phone. I texted it. I was like, hey, Carl, you know. And I'm like, he's not going to. I felt dumb. I was like, this is not going to happen.
Yeah.
And 5 minutes, not even 2 minutes later, I get a phone call, and I'm in my daughter's room with my daughter, and he calls me up. He's like, put it on speaker, and I'm like, hello. He's like, hey, it's Carl. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. I'm like, you're kidding me. He's like, hey, how's it going? I'm like, bro, I'm doing good. And my daughter's freaking out. She's freaking out. She doesn't know what to say. She's losing it. I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, driving. He's like, driving to dinner, whatever. And he goes, I got a battle in Guanacelli tomorrow on Guys Grocery Games. And I was like, man, that's crazy. Like, and he said, yeah, I'm really nervous about it. And I said, well, you know, she is an Iron Chef, so that makes sense, you know. But he's like, I said, I know you can do well. Like, you've got the spunk to be able to get through it, you know.
Yeah.
And he was super nervous, but you know, then he's talking a little bit more. He's like, all right, man. And then he had to go, and he left. And then I texted him right after I texted him, like, you know, a picture of Guanacelli, and I said, man, good luck tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know, you can do it. And then he texted back like, oh, you know, like, good. And then I watched that episode. I remember watching it. It was, you know, a couple months later or a couple weeks later, and he actually beat her.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly. And so I was like, you know, it was just really a good moment, you know, and but the fact that he even called, you know, was just like, it's just crazy. I mean, that blew my mind. It just showed how, like, awesome he was, you know.
Well, he was, and I think to everybody who kind of, you know, subscribe, prescribe to him, one of the things about him that rang through the most, and I mean, this is from, you know, somebody who, here's a fun story you'll appreciate. When I got my camo trucker cap Ruizing hat, and I put it on, took a picture for the Insta, tagged him, Vic Henley, Nick Solaris, and all them, and said, here's the hat. And 5 minutes later, love it, bro! And Vic Henley chimes in 2 minutes after that, bend your fucking brim, Billy Ray! And, like, they literally fought over my stupid hat. But the fact that, like, he never needed to do that. He never needed to say, like, yes, I'll do your podcast. You know, to this day, like, again, it's kind of like this weird borderline haunt and privilege. I got the yes, but I didn't get to do it. Like, but he said the yes because of what like, he was all about that. And that, you know, your story, my messages to him, I've heard, you know, other folks where, like, if they just got in a spot, like, he was there, like nothing. And that speaks volumes to who the dude was. You know, again, just to call you back, like, how cool is that shit? And your daughter's never gonna forget that.
Yeah. No. And that's funny because your story about you getting the guest on the podcast, which is actually I have a parallel story. Because it was like summer of I'm trying to think, summer of 2019, right? So probably August, July, and I was just, you know, online, whatever, and then I was like, hey, because I wanted to go. It's right after you opened La Cabana, so I wanted to go to New York and go to eat some at his restaurant. Why wouldn't you? Yeah. And so I was talking to him about it. I'm like, hey, you know, I'm thinking about coming up there, like in the fall, like October or whatever. And he's like, I said, you want to hang out or whatever and go drinking or something after? And he's like, oh yeah, sure, just come on up, no problem. You know, we'll hang out. So I was like, all right, cool. You know, and I was 100% planning on going there, like in October. Yeah. And I had to go to Chicago for my cousin's wedding. Yeah. In September. September, the third week of September.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it would parallel Fair Week, which is when, so long story short, local school districts here have off for the week of the Bloomsburg Fair, so we plan on going on vacation. So we went to our timeshare in Mexico, which is where I got the call. So
yeah, so I was there, and you know, I saw the news too, right? And I woke up on the day after my cousin's wedding. It was my sister's birthday. That's why I remember it. But, and I remember thinking, you know, later on, like way after that, you know, I actually messaged CGPC like right away. It was like, you know, what's going on? Is this real? Like, what's happening?
Yeah.
You know, and he, you know, he messaged me back. I said, yeah. But, you know, so then I had to go to my sister's birthday party.
Yeah.
She was living in, she came up for my cousin's wedding.
Yeah.
And they were having it at my cousin's house in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
But, so anyway, like, I got the guest to go hang out with him. You know, I had a plan. We had a plan. Like, the plan was for me to go over there. We were going to hang out. I was going to eat the food and all that stuff. And literally, you know, in a couple of weeks, it was just gone.
It's nuts.
You know, and
yeah.
So I understand your pain. Because it's like, and I tell like his friend Matty Rock and people like that. Like, if I just got to hang out with him for a little bit, like I know it would have been cool. Like, you know, he's a really cool dude. And, so yeah, that one, it was a tough day that day. Like, I know it was a Sunday. It was a tough day. In general, just couldn't believe it. You know,
no shit, man. I was in. Legitimately, you want to hear how bougie this bullshit is? I'm in a pool. I'm in like a walk-up bar pool in Mexico, and my phone rings. I have my phone in the water. That ought to tell you what kind of mode I was in. Which, honestly, I got to be honest, I think Carl would have appreciated that shit. That I'm getting that call that way. That felt pretty good. And, you know, I got it, and, you know, I don't think the impact hit right away. You know, I think I just kind of stood there for a moment, and, you know, my wife came over, and she's like, you okay? I'm like, and I told her, and she's like, oh my God, that's terrible. You know, she didn't necessarily know the myth, the man, the legend that he was. And you know what? I just kind of looked out over the edge of the infinity pool, looked at the freaking ocean skyline, you know, felt the buzz kicking in nice and hard, and I'm like, fuck it, I'm where I need to be. Like, and I made temporary peace with it there. You know, having gone through the Bourdain thing, now Carl, it's like, I don't know, do you kind of grow scars from it and just kind of roll with it? But, you know, it felt okay, and I knew there was more, you know, because of what Bourdain's death taught me, you know, I knew there was more stories to tell, more life to live, more love to share of the art of the lore. And, you know, dude, that's where, again, you know, Mikey LeBron and Shawn Rosler didn't ever have to cross paths, and yet this blustery, loud-ass Cuban chef kind of put us together in this thing called Ruizing. So, transition-wise, let's talk about just what Ruizing is. You know, I know what it is. I know why I dropped the hashtag. To you, Mikey, what is Ruizing, and how is it done properly, sir?
Yeah, I think, well, it could mean a lot of things to a lot of people, obviously, but I mean, to me, it really means the core of it. To me, is like, you know, live your life. Like, don't be afraid to go out there and, you know, sing some karaoke, right? Get drunk.
Yep.
Eat some fries.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, just whatever you're doing that makes you happy.
That's it.
Right?
Yeah.
That's really what it is. Like, and so you can literally be sitting by on a beach with doing nothing but looking at the ocean, right? And you could be Ruizing at that point. I mean,
Agreed.
There's so many things you could be doing, right?
Agreed.
But, I mean, to a lot of us, you know, you know, a lot of people that I hang out with, it's like, all right, we're smoking cigars, we're drinking bourbon, you know.
Yep.
We're drinking Miller Lite, whatever, and that's Ruizing, right? Like, you know, you could be, you know, again, eating a pile of fast food at McDonald's, you know, and being Ruizing. Anything makes you happy, really. You know, if you're really good at something, you know, like a talent, and you're just like, hey, I'm killing it today, you know, I'm Ruizing, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a lifestyle in a way, you know. It's the whole thing, and you and I actually met before Carl passed. We were just in that group, right? Of Carl fame.
Right? You got it, man.
That knew what Ruizing was, right? So we met a while ago.
Yep.
You know, and you know, I think Carl passed. It just got stronger, you know, with you know, the bond got stronger between his fans.
Yeah. No, I would absolutely agree with that. I would agree that the core bond in general among us all tightened up for sure. Like, Stan, Pete, Bobby, Gloria, Nick Solares for sure. It just kind of happened. And at the same time, I think the definition solidified. Like when we dropped that, we know what we're doing. We know we're doing what we love, borderline excessively, more than likely excessively. And that's okay because, in the words of Dave Matthews, life is short but sweet for certain. So why would you not go out? And I'm pretty sure Carl hated Dave Matthews, to be fair. So that ought to piss him off. But, it is. And it's one of those things where it just worked. I think almost like any good cult, Mikey. They find something that speaks to people and they latch into it. And sure enough, I think it worked for us all. So I want to transition because, Jesus Christ, we could fanboy all fucking night about Carl. But your art, like, look, I can talk all night and that's like, okay. Dude, you're an artist of a ridiculous caliber. And I'm looking at the print you did, which I have framed right here in my studio next to my Bourdain. Because again, in the hierarchy of things, what two greater are there? And okay, let's take it all the way back. Let's go historic for a second. What got you into art in the first place, Mr. CPA? Like you're an auditor, you're a CPA. You're not supposed to be an artist, and yet you're this friggin' amazing artist. So what got you started there?
That's just, that goes back to diapers. So,
nice.
We're just, drawing all the time, crayons and a huge comic book fan back, still am, but massive comic book fan. I love comic books, and so I just read them all the time. The minute I was looking at them before I could even read. So just reading, mm-hmm. Mostly Spider-Man, but a bunch of other stuff. And my grandfather, on my grandfather's side of the family, my mom's side of the family, there's a lot of musicians and artists. So I kind of got that from that side of the family. And, I just started just drawing all the time. That's what I was known for as a child. I was just known for being able to draw. And so that was my thing. And so, I went all the way through school, to elementary school. I went to a local high school that had a fine arts program in it. Mm-hmm. Went through that 4 years of that, excelled all the way through just because it's what it is. Like, and you can't teach that kind of stuff. And people say it all the time, well, you can't teach it. It's like a singer, right? They're born to sing, they sing,
Yep.
And they just don't know anything different. So I just was always good at people, mostly, mm-hmm. drawing people. That's one of my favorite things to do. So, I applied to Reynolds School of Design, in 1992. And I got in, and back then, I didn't know a lot about how you got to pay for college or any of that kind of stuff. But if my mom had actually filled out the FAFSA form, I may have been able to go, because we didn't make any money, right? So,
sure.
I probably got a crap ton of loans or a crap ton of grants or something. But anyway, I kind of, the school back then was about $20,000 a year in 92, 93. Mm-hmm. And they didn't have financial aid for first year students. So I couldn't go. I got to a point where I had a roommate assigned to me and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And I paid the $500 application fee myself. I worked my job and paid for it myself and sent them my portfolio and all this stuff. So, my uncle and aunt took me on a tour of the campus, right? Mm-hmm. And all that stuff. So it was sad for me. Like, it was kind of a letdown. I couldn't go.
Yeah.
And then then you got to a point where you're just kind of stuck,
yeah.
And, I still wanted to pursue art in school in some form. But I had no way to do it. And being from that tiny town, right, in, that tiny farm town, I really didn't have a lot of options back then. So, I felt, well, my uncle was in the Army. My grandfather had been in the Army. I was like, well, they give aid for school, right? There's some school help there. Yep. And I can get out of this town. So
sounds like a win-win to me, buddy.
That's what I did. I signed up and I and I went, and then I, took a while, right, to get back to any kind of art. I mean, I was still drawing, but like, the rat race kicks in.
Oh, of course, man. Yeah.
Trying to you got to pay bills. You're doing rent and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So I was kind of in that mode. So I came back to Connecticut, and I was in the National Guard, so I was doing drills every month, and 2 weeks in the summer and stuff. But I was in this rat race where I couldn't figure out how to get back into any kind of school, and not like give up my apartments or anything. So
sure, yeah.
It was just a tough spot.
Absolutely.
Eventually I got to go to UConn for like a year, and I did a year of that. So I did like all my general stuff, and I did some art classes, and I sort of got back into art again. And then I kind of rat race kicked in again, and I kind of had to pull away from it. So fast forward, like a bunch of years, probably like 4 or 5 years or so, bebopping around different apartments and stuff like that. I met my wife and everything, and so I ended up eventually like not working, and she just kind of floated. I worked as a bartender.
There you go.
Through college.
Yep.
So I had a year on my belt, and then I started, going back full time, and I went through like college over in Connecticut, Connecticut State University. But by that point, I had gone to part-time school. I was at a community college, and realized that I had a knack for business.
There you go.
I started with business management. And kind of expanded into accounting. Because I had taken an accounting class in that major, so I was like, once I hit accounting, I was like, wow, this is it. Like, this is what I want to do. Like, this is amazing, And you finally find your thing, right? That's
it. Yep.
So I found it, and then I ran with it, and all of that. And so, I got out of that school, and then the rest of it's pretty much history. But the art thing kind of ended up, I had a small art business when I was, before I hit college for the second time. I was doing portraits, selling portraits.
As I sit back in my chair, look at the art on my wall, and go, "No shit, Mikey, you did portraits? Go figure."
Yeah, I was doing some, just people get from photographs and stuff like that, and it was going all right. I mean, but when I got to all this food stuff, and one day I just was thinking to myself, I really should do. I feel like I need to do something, right? Something.
Yeah.
What am I? Because I was looking at my Instagram, and I'm like, what am I good at? I'm like,
what are you good at?
My Instagram, I'm like, my Instagram's all over the place. It was like just not real focused, and it was very. It had food there and kind of just some stuff, and I'm like, hey, I don't know. I want to. What am I good at? Like, if you look at yourself and say, what can I do?
Yep.
And I said, well, I can draw. I know I can do that. And I said, well. Then I thought to myself, I was sitting there having a beer. I'm like, what should I draw? And I'm looking at my Ruizing band, and I'm like, what should I draw? What should I draw? And then it dawned on me. I was just like, man, I should probably draw Carl, because everyone loves Carl. And
yep.
And I love Carl. Like, it'd be nice to have a drawing of Carl in the house, or So and this is after I went to a charity barbecue event, and met a bunch of people I met on Instagram. I met them in person.
Nice.
That Handsome Devil Barbecue in Newburgh, New York. So,
yep.
So went over there, met everybody there, and it was like, literally a week after that, is when I was like, yeah, I need to do this drawing.
Yeah.
So I did it, and then I got a call. I got a note from my friend Tracy. It was like, hey, you should come to the Staten Island barbecue event. In the Pig Island one. And you should come to that one, and we could all go together. It'd be fun. She goes, I'm judging it, so it'd be cool. And I was like, oh yeah, that sounds like a fun time. So, and I was gearing up to go to that, and I was just about finishing up the Carl's portrait. And I met, I don't know if you know Dan Solway, but I met him. I met him at the first event I went to, right? So, and he was actually helping Jimmy coordinate the Pig Island event. So And I knew they were having a lot of the vendors were having raffles and things like that. And it kind of dawned on me. I was like, what if I donated this portrait to one of the vendors, just as one of the raffle items for charity or something? And so I messaged Dan, and I was like, hey, can you talk to Jimmy and see if they want to? I sent him a picture of it. I said, see if anybody wants to use this as a raffle item. And I kind of figured there'd be a lot of Carl fans at the barbecue event. I just kind of figured. So maybe I thought it would help raise some money. And it unfortunately didn't make a lot of money because there actually wasn't a lot of Carl fans there, which is weird. But the people that were there, like Mario from Big Papa, like Tank and all those guys, like the people that knew him, really like gravitated toward it and really,
they showed up. They loved it. They definitely had love for it.
They liked it. And that's okay. Like it was really more about getting it to someone who wanted it, right?
Exactly. And,
and so that kind of worked out. Mario's wife ended up getting it, and I was really happy about that, right? So that was cool.
Awesome. That's awesome.
And that's kind of where it started. I mean, it just kind of started there, and then as you know, a lot of people got the portraits.
Yeah, and I mean, certainly demand for your pieces, for your work in general, has been on the uptick. And so I want to transition away from the drawing to the shirt. Now, you just, I want to say, was it 2 weeks ago, Mikey, or close to that anyway, that this new fantastic shirt, which if you're watching on YouTube, people, you're going to see the shirt and you're going to want the shirt. Just vaulted out, looks amazing, and it is based on the drawing, correct?
Yeah, it's right off the drawing. I wasn't sure if it would work, honestly, because it took a little bit of finagling, or to get it in the right format. But luckily I was driving down the street on I think it was a Friday in my town, and so driving down Main Street, probably headed to the bar on I think it was a nice sunny Friday afternoon or something.
Nice.
And I'm like, I went to get a cigar at the cigar shop. Yeah. And I came down the Main Street, and I look over to the left, and I see this like print shop, like, and I hadn't seen it before, and it was like O&E Customs, and it had T-shirts in the window.
Oh,
and I was kind of like, what is that place? And I kind of looked at it real quick and drove by, and then I looked up on my phone to figure out what it was, and it was all just a T-shirt printing and like all kinds of different printing. And so I was like, well, maybe I can talk to them about getting a shirt done, because I've been looking around for a place to do it, and I couldn't find. I would like to keep it local in my town, right, and support local businesses anyway.
Definitely.
So I think I emailed the guy, and I said, here's what I want to do. Let me know if you think it's possible. Actually, he's got a lot of great equipment there, and he's really got a good shop. So I ended up working with him, getting the file, and going down, and then he did a proof, that he showed me, and the proof was exactly what I wanted. I said, this is perfect. And my plan was to get some made up, and I was going to the second cigar barbecue in Newburgh a couple of weeks later on, and I said, well, I want to bring some of these shirts to that event and just kind of give some away to some of Carl's friends, and just kind of make them happy, right? So he ended up getting the shirts done on time. I literally the night before I boxed them up and brought them in my car down to Newburgh, and it just ended up being a great time with those.
Absolutely.
And, kudos to Justin Warner, honestly, for opening it up online.
Yep.
And really touting that thing, because that's and honestly, I always as well that T-shirt going to the Bad Period Foundation.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, the fun's going that way. Again, I kind of sat on the Justin Warner news because I'm like, I want to tell everybody, but wasn't the time, wasn't the place. But when I got mine in the mail, it honestly felt like Christmas all over again, for sure. So, the shirt's out, the drawing's out. What other projects do you have in the wings? Do you have any?
Well, I'm not doing a food related one right now, but I'm doing I'm drawing the roll right now for one of my friends.
Nice.
So that's gonna hopefully take me, again, full-time job, everything else, but I'm hoping to be done with it 2 to 3 weeks max. Get it all done, and then you may see that one up online as well eventually. In a sort of unboxing fashion.
Nice. Yeah.
So that one is just sending it up to the original in the mail, and then we'll see what happens after that.
Absolutely.
But then I'm going to do another food related one. I'm going to do a couple more. I just got to get through this one first. These things take I see guys online that can draw a portrait in an hour and a half, 2 hours, and then pop it out, make what your friends, it's all online, and they're doing awesome,
Yeah.
But the way that I draw is very slow, and as you know, super detailed. So
yeah,
it just takes me a lot longer to. I think the call one took me about 4 hours, 4.5.
My God, man. I mean, for even 4 hours, I look at that and go, do you realize what shit my work would look like compared to yours in 4 hours, let alone 8, let alone 12? So, man, I mean, it's impressive. Dave Grohl in the wings, more food stuff in the wings. If you want to check him out, it's Mikey Eats It on Insta, correct, sir?
Yeah, Instagram, whatever. Yep, Twitter, it's all the same.
Twitter's the same, and Mikey LeBron out on the Book of Face. Just incredible stuff, man. Like, if you go out and you look, you're not gonna believe what it is you're looking at. So, a couple afters before we wrap, because I gotta ask these. It's just part of the episode. It's part of canon, and typically I ask this if I'm standing in your kitchen, but if I'm in your art studio and we're both drawing, I'm making it look like a goddamn stick figure compared to what you're doing. And you control the music. What are we listening to?
I gravitate to flip-flop.
Okay.
So some days I can listen to straight 80s rock.
Nice.
And then some days I go with the 90s rock, depending on my mood. Right, I'll flip-flop.
Gotcha.
Between the two usually. So I got because I grew up. Obviously I was 80s. I grew up a late 70s, early 80s kid. So I grew up on all the hair metal.
Absolutely.
Van Halen, all that stuff.
Yep.
And then as I got older, obviously, Nirvana and Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, all those guys.
Yep.
So that's probably what you would hear in my art studio. If you walked in there. I'm actually a massive U2 fan as well.
Nice.
So yeah, U2 is U2. I would say my favorite bands like AC/DC, U2, those two.
That's a nice spread. That is a nice nice couple of bookends there, U2 and AC/DC. Next question. This has never been included on the show before, but this is a special occasion of sorts. If Carl, through the power of whatever, could come back for 30 minutes and you could talk to him, what is the first question you'd lead off with?
That's a toughie.
Didn't mean to go heavy, dude. Sorry.
Yeah, that's a toughie, man. Because you don't want to ask something stupid, you only have, you didn't know you have 30 minutes, but that's...
And yet, would he appreciate the irony of asking something so inane that, what are you doing, bro?
I don't know. It's a toss-up between, talking about bourbon.
Yeah.
And being like, what's your favorite bourbon? Which I kind of already think I know. But, what do you, something like that. We're talking about watches, right? Because I don't know anything about watches.
Yeah.
Honestly, I wish I did. But Carl knew a lot about watches.
Yes, he did.
And so I would probably pick his brain about watches and try and figure out what watch I should get, because I've been thinking about getting one. And I haven't talked to Matty Rock about it yet, but he's also really knowledgeable about watches. But yeah, if Carl was sitting here, I probably would start picking his brain a little bit about that. And that's just kind of off the top of my head, because it's, I'm sure I could find, if I had the time to think, so many questions, about everything. I'd probably say, can I come to the creepy cabin? Is that you get to go?
Yep.
And, all kinds of stuff.
Yep.
But yeah, knowing what he knows and what he likes to talk about, right?
Yep.
It's also possible that I would want to cook with him. Like, that would be a dream, right? To actually sit there in your kitchen or something.
Yep. Okay. So you just provided me the segue into the second to last question, and it typically reads, what would your ideal Last Supper be? Like, if you're checking out tomorrow, what would it be? Here's what I'm going to ask you, Mikey. You get one chance to cook a meal with Carl. What would it be? Who would be there? What would you drink? We know it's starting with some high-class bourbon. Just because.
Yeah, that's already a given.
High Life Pounders and bourbon.
Elijah
Craig, for sure.
Elijah
Yep.
Craig. You know, we're doing some cheap Miller Journeyman drafts. You know,
yeah, goddamn right.
You know, and then I feel like something fried needs to be in here. Like,
yep.
I'm thinking like a fried chicken or like a fish and chips or something fried.
Love it.
You know, I don't want to go super cheap like hot dogs, but like I love hot dogs too.
Right on.
But you know, I'm doing like some kind of a fried thing. Like, do it outside in like in the portable fryer later. You know, sit outside and do it.
Yep.
And then I mean, who would be there? I mean, Carl, my friend Tracy, Gara, Matty Rock. You know, everybody all of his friends. I mean, everybody that I know, Eddie Noel, you know, everybody who could be there, probably you. know?
Hell yeah. That's a fucking honor, man. That's 187 episodes. I've never been invited to be at that Last Supper, except for mine. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. So that's an honor and a half. I would absolutely take that, my good sir. And finally, Mikey LeBron. Same question we ask everybody, regardless rather, of culinary background, profession, what have you. What is food to you in a single word?
So, happiness.
Love it.
That's my word, because, and I think if I was in a different life, right?
Yeah.
A different path, like, I didn't really discover, like, I've always been good at, like, organizing, you know, parties and things like that. Like, I'm a huge extrovert, so
yep.
I love doing that kind of stuff. I love making people, seeing people being happy,
yep.
and saying, you know, I'm doing something good, right? Making people happy, right?
Sure.
And so, to me, when I cook something, and my friend Jeff, you know, he could tell you this too, because I love making food for people. To me, it's an act of love. I mean, you're pouring your soul and yourself into this food, trying to make it the best you can. And you're trying to, you know, convey that,
yep.
you know, through your food to other people.
That's
so. That's what chefs do. Like, I may have not gone to culinary school, but I still feel that way when I cook something. You know?
That's it.
When people say to me, "Wow, this is really good," I can't believe, you know, what did you put in here? You know, or you know, it really just makes you feel good. It makes you feel happy and that they're happy.
It does. There's no better feeling. I would wholeheartedly agree with you, sir. And it has been beyond an honor and a half to actually connect with you after all this time, after all this Ruizing. Speaking of Ruizing, let's let everybody know where they can find you. Again, Mikey Eats It on the Insta and the Twitter. Mikey LeBron out on the Book of Face. Watch what's coming out of this guy, because it is remarkable. Now that you said Dave Grohl, I'm all keyed in. I'm like, oh, really? And I'll talk more to you offline about that. So, but again, Mike, such an absolute pleasure, and we got to do it in person someday soon.
Oh, sure, man. Not that far away.
Absolutely, brother. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been episode number 188, a humble tribute to the man, Chef Carl Ruiz himself. My guest this evening has been the inimitable artist extraordinaire, Mikey LeBron. Again, check him out on the Insta and the Twitter, Mikey Eats It, and Mike LeBron out on the Book of Face. Our producer, as always, this evening has been the Reverend Johnny Lamoria, a.k.a. Johnny Leland Robinson. Be sure to check out all his Pirate Party of Wayne County happenings on the Book of Face and the Gram of Insta. Next episode is going to be number 189. You can barely count it high. Stick with us. Stay tuned. Are you passing through central Pennsylvania and looking for one of the best dining experiences and craft brew menus around? Look no further. Turkey Hill Brewing Company and 991 Central Road in Bloomsburg, PA has everything you could ask for and then some. Service, food, beer together. Unbelievable. Be sure to check them out. Call them today for reservations. 570-387-8422. Call today.